Good morning and welcome to Mindset Mondays with DTK. This is episode number 106 in an ongoing series of live broadcasts designed for those who have a growth mindset or those who'd like to create one. And here it's the opportunity to play with new ideas, turn over new topics, and try on new mindsets. So if you'll take just a moment and just below your screen, look for the share button. Yeah. And if you will share this with your community, your friends, your colleagues, the more folk we have in the conversation, the richer the conversation. Well, thank you for joining in today. Here's the quote we get to play with today. Right? You get to play with the idea. This is something from Warren Buffett. You never know who's swimming naked until the tide goes out. So this is one of those in 2005. This is going back in again, in the last 106 episodes, you may have heard bits and pieces of the story. So if you have, enjoy. I used to joke that even that early on in Facebook's existence, in 2005, man, my life looked fabulous on Facebook. Yeah. Company just celebrated its 10th anniversary. It's like 7% of companies ever make it to 10 years. Right. I've been married for 13 years to a woman, and Elaine and I had known each other since we were 11 and 12. And by the way, we just celebrated our 28th anniversary this past weekend. So I've been married to Elaine for 13 years. We had the big house and 3 kids in private school, 2 dogs. Everything looked fantastic, but that was just on the surface. That was a stretch where I was on my way to being completely dead inside. And I joke about it now. And it got to the point where I used to say that when I turned the doorknob to the office, my stomach turned, right? And that's exactly what Warren Buffett was talking about, that idea that you never know who's swimming naked until the tide goes out. When the economy's high, when the markets are good, when everything is going well on the surface, you never know how fast the duck's feet are spinning underwater. We compare ourselves to what we see in others. If somebody compared themselves to me at that time, it would have been a tough comparison. Everything looked fabulous, but inside, I was lost. So when we compare ourselves to others based on what we see them present to the world, how often are we comparing ourselves to that artfully curated image, that beautiful social media persona, right? A picture perfect appearance. Or are we just seeing them through our lens? What if the energy that we expended in that status checking, that comparing, was spent focusing on doing the work on ourselves, following our calling, making an impact? Yeah, that's always the most powerful track to be on. Using the energy you have for what makes a difference in your world. Guys, it's so easy to get caught up in that comparison piece. And this comes up a couple times a year again. There are a lot of times with new clients where this conversation comes up. I'm even in a mastermind group. We were just together in Santa Fe in February. And one of the folk in the group is comparing himself to other people in the room. Oh my God, this one's rocking it. This one's posting all these things about how they're succeeding and killing it here. And this one's doing something that nobody else on the planet is doing, and they're amazing. And by the way, it's the same thing that a year ago in Santa Fe I was doing. And the danger is that we compare ourselves to someone else. We have no idea what A, they went through to get there, and what B, they're going through to be there right now. And C, oh my God, we're comparing our beginning to their middle. And this goes back to an episode I did super early on in the single digits of Mindset Monday. It was Teddy Roosevelt's comment that comparison is the thief of joy. And it's amazing. I get that more and more and more and more as I go on. Part of what I did this last week was work with Christopher Maher, who is he does true body intelligence. And it's a combination of methodologies that come from Eastern and Western medicine and some things that he's created himself. And oh my God, he's trained 800 practitioners around the planet. And it's easy to look at him and say, holy shit. Comparing myself, I know that the work that I do for my clients is transformational for them. Christopher's breaking new ground, creating new treatment modalities for folks that have destroyed their bodies and have generational stress that they've got embedded in their bodies. And it's incredible work. And there's nobody else on the planet doing that. And I can compare myself to what Christopher's doing and the impact that Christopher's making. But I'm not going to, he was a Navy SEAL for 9 years, an Olympic athlete for 5 years, and destroyed his body. So when I compare myself and what I'm doing in my practice and my work to what he's doing in his world, it denies in the equation all the different things that he's done to get him where he is, and the calling that he has and the path that he's on, and how different they are than who I am and my calling and the work that I do. Comparisons are destructive. And yet we do it all the time. Part of what David Rock, with his SCARF model, he's a coach and psychologist out of Australia. The first thing in his SCARF model is status. The first thing that humans do is status checking. That made sense when we were competing with animals for our own survival. We checked our status against the other humans around us and the other animals in our field, because if they had better access to food, or they were stronger than we were, or they were more highly ranked in our pack than I was, that was a problem. That was a threat to our very existence. It's very rare that we're in a situation where we're competing for our survival. We're competing for food or clothing or shelter for our very survival on a moment by moment basis. It's a very rare, thank God, across the developed world, a very rare component. It's not a minute by minute, day by day experience. But we're wired to check status. We're wired to compare ourselves to others. So this work to get out of that mode of comparison is going above our wiring. It's not going against our nature. It's going above our wiring. At least that's a great way of looking at this. It's all we ever glean from another status should be inspiration and ideas and impetus. Yes, thank God, wouldn't that be amazing? To compare ourselves to others and look for points of learning and growth, and not look for a status check. I'm not competing with Christopher for business. I'm not competing with Christopher or anybody else around me for survival. It doesn't mean my body's not reacting that way. Everything we have ever talked about on Mindset Mondays from the very beginning comes down to self-awareness and choice. Being aware of what's going on in our body and our mind, and choosing whether to lean into it or rise above it or choose something different. This is a perfect example of rising above it. I'm watching Shelley Paxton with her book Soulbatical. I wish I could have just picked it up and shown it to you. Shelley Paxton has released her book earlier this year called Soulbatical. Phenomenal book, and I've got a ringside seat watching Shelley promote the book and go on her press tours and do all this work around promoting it. And I look at that, and the first thought is, oh shit. Starting to promote the book this past couple weeks on Groundhog Day, and beginning to slowly push the book now in anticipation of its release at the beginning of April. I've got a ringside seat of what the next 3 months after the release are going to look like. And it's funny, what I noticed my comparisons are, I'm comparing my energy to hers. Like, holy crap, do I have that much energy? right? And wow. Now, back to what Lisa said about looking for inspiration, ideas, and impetus. Yeah, watching what she's doing and learning and looking at Author Central and learning what's the ideal way to promote a book based on what I want to do with this book. And so as Mindset Mondays with DTK, as the book starts to come out, and yes, you'll hear more about it in the coming weeks. Yeah, a lot more. It's interesting as I notice the comparison bug coming up. And as I become aware of that comparison trigger, it's important for me to choose how to see what's happening. Is it a model? Is it a cautionary tale? Is there information there for me? Are there resources there for me? Looking for the opportunity and not the not the self-judgment that comes up. Lawrence says, how does peer review differ from comparing, and is there a place for that in any profession? Yeah, yes, thank God. And I think, taking peer review out of the legal and medical profession where there's a process for reviewing documents. But peer-to-peer comparison can be incredibly powerful so long as you're comparing what they're doing with who they are, what lights them up, right? And are they working at and living at their best? Jim Rohn said, nothing worse than getting to the top of the ladder and realizing you've had your ladder against the wrong building or against the wrong wall. Holy shit. Yeah, you could be comparing yourself to a peer who's absolutely crushing it on the outside, but crushed on the inside. So when you see a partner in a law firm or a professional or somebody who's thriving on the outside, how are they doing? Who are they being? I watched that with an internet strategy and web development firm back in the late 90s and throughout the 2000s, our company, comparing ourselves to other firms. And wow, I mean, how many of the folks that I knew that were in the business back then who were so freaking thrilled to get out of it? And yet I was comparing my company or our company to their company all the way along, not knowing that, and I'm not going to name names, but not knowing that they were dying on the inside just like we were. Some of them were thriving. And it's funny, those weren't the ones that I was comparing us to. The ones that looked like they were doing well. They were putting up a brilliant facade. Yeah, Marcella says, planning, reasoning, give a course I want my life. It's better to put my energy into visualizing and creating instead of comparing. Absolutely. The opportunity to put that energy, all the studies around Olympic level athletes, when they split a group of athletes in half and one half spent the 8 hours each day in physical workout, in the actual training, let's say track and field, the physical training, and the other half would spend 4 hours in the physical training, the same exact activities, just half as much of those activities, and the other 4 hours in visualization, visualizing themselves on the track, visualizing themselves in the event, visualize themselves winning, doing the visualization. That group that split their time between the physical work and the visualization work, they outperformed the other group that did nothing but the physical work. They outperformed them in every single metric. Your brain doesn't know the difference between the visualization and the truth. Spending the time visualizing creates that truth for your brain and your body. And it makes it easier to live that. So on one hand, peer-to-peer comparison is great for education. What's important is being very careful not to make that your visualization. So you end up visualizing living their freaking life. Wow, that's dangerous. Whereas doing the visualization of what your life looks like when you nail it, when you win, when you succeed, when you create the life you want, creating that picture, spending time visualizing that way is amazingly powerful. It dramatically increases the chances of you creating that outcome. And I'll leave you with this piece. There's a neat distinction between a manager and an entrepreneur. And again, many of you have heard this the couple times I've shared it, so hang with me. It's brief. The idea that a manager is given a goal and their job is to create and implement and manage the execution of a plan to ensure that that goal becomes reality. Well, an entrepreneur is different. An entrepreneur decides what she wants to see as true and then goes about creating the conditions to make that truth the reality. She decides what she wants to see is true and then goes about creating the conditions to make that truth reality. That's what an entrepreneur does. Notice the ideas around visualization inherent in that. Deciding what it is you want to be true, painting that picture and visualizing it, and then creating the conditions to make that truth reality. Merely by visualizing, you are beginning to create the conditions, definitely one of them, for that truth to become reality. So it's the beginning of the week. It's beginning of a month. It's an opportunity for you to start creating the vision of what you want to see as your truth, and then creating the conditions to make that truth reality. So between now and next week, what mindset will you choose?